Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to Epic Comic Book Wednesday. This is a world's finest collaboration between myself and Michael K Vaughan, where we combine the forces of stately Vaughan Manor and Hyde Cottage to talk about the comic books on which we've wasted our youths. And our comic book choices so far in September have been guided by another comic YouTube staple, which is new this year. Michael K Vaughan is spearheading an event called Sumerian September, designed to encourage you to take down that Gollancz paperback of the complete Robert E. Howard Conan, or some other complete Robert E. Howard Conan, and read the original stories that kicked off all of this fuss. I'm having a blast with Sumerian September with my own take on the event, but it reflects on Epic Comic Book Wednesday because we've been looking at Conan. We've been looking at Conan the Barbarian. And today we're looking at a very interesting, very special delivery method for these Marvel Conan comic books. Marvel started out with Conan the Barbarian, a 4-color comic book that was just there on the stands. It was really the first time Marvel had ever tried anything like it, and it did well. Fans responded. They really liked it. And then Marvel played off the success of that comic by starting a black and white comic devoted to Conan called Savage Sword of Conan. They were both written by Roy Thomas. The artwork was by different people. Conan the Barbarian at first was by Barry Windsor Smith, and the Savage Sword of Conan, for the bulk of its run, was by John Buscema. And they're both really, really good comic artists. I think Barry Windsor Smith probably, once he developed his own style, takes a little more getting used to. John Buscema is a very classic comic book artist, so you get what you see and you see what you get. And because Conan was successful, Savage Sword of Conan eventually was raised out of the ashes of Savage Tales and launched, and it was successful too. And then an idea swept the comic book world. This was back in the 70s. An idea swept the comic book world to do customized bells and whistles reprint volumes in a larger size. And Marvel started coming out with what they called the Treasury editions. Here are the first two Conan Marvel Treasury editions. See, this was number 4, and this was number 15. They weren't all Conan, of course. They started with the Spider-Man and the Fantastic Four and Thor and the Hulk. They eventually moved on to Conan. And these have original artwork on the front and on the back. And usually some original artwork inside. They were much more expensive than a normal comic book. They weren't 20 cents. They were $1 or $1.50. Extortionate pricing. But you did get your money's worth. And in addition to all the bells and whistles, like, let's take an example here. Let me just page through this thing. Yes, okay. In for instance, this one, in Conan the Barbarian Treasury Edition number 15, this number 15 Treasury Edition, the Red Sonja, a character largely created by Roy Thomas. He very loosely based her on a Robert E. Howard character that sounded and acted nothing like her and was not in the Hyborian Age. The terrific winning character, something that Conan really needed. And Red Sonja was also really popular with fans, so Marvel gave her her own book that I believe has just had a big hardcover omnibus edition collecting all of these adventures. And in this issue, as an extra, they give you pin-up material. They give you posters that were done of Red Sonja by various artists. This, for instance, was done by Dick Giordano to while away the time at a SonjaCon, at a Red Sonja convention, a Robert E. Howard convention. So, absent this book, you would never see this. It was retouched, it was colored and inked, and put in here. Also, this delightful thing by Frank Thorne. Frank Thorne did a lot of the artwork for Red Sonja's own comic. That hardcover anthology will be full of his work. And this is just an original sketch that he did of Red Sonja, waving a sword and in her iron bikini, and also a tankard of ale, because she was very much Conan-esque in that sense. So you would get extras like that, and also reprints in these things. So if you are Marvel Comics, you're going to, let's look at the first Conan thing. Here, the first Conan thing will give you a pinup in the back. In Memoriam, Robert E. Howard. It will give you, see if we can quickly go to some other original artwork. I don't want to stress the original bits and pieces too much because they were only a tiny part. Yeah, there we go. Big spread of a map. The main draw that this had for the bean counters at Marvel Comics is that for the bother of producing these things, you could charge a lot more money, and they were going to be 95% reprints. There would be original material and repurposed material. There'd probably be original prose. Roy Thomas was good at that, but it'd be mostly reprints. So you would be making your money back. It was and hence it became a fad to do reprint volumes in oversized editions like this. Marvel did a whole bunch of them. I was a big fan right from the beginning of this idea. I thought it was just terrific, so I got a lot of them. And I was an even bigger fan when DC did it as well. DC did the limited collector's edition. It was the exact same thing. They weren't square-bound. DC's weren't square-bound. But they were the exact same thing. Just a larger set of reprints with a little bit of original material sprinkled throughout to make you feel like you were buying something new. Usually an originally commissioned artwork for the cover as well. And the subject of these oversized reprint volumes is, first of all, it was prescient in two ways to our present day. But it's also a little bit melancholy for me for a reason that you're going to be able to predict if you've been watching any of these videos. I, of course, got some of those limited collector editions from DC, the company that produces real superheroes. I got some of those from DC, especially. You'd think that the Superman volume would be my favorite. It was beautiful. It had a Jose Luis Garcia Lopez cover of Superman flying past the Statue of Liberty with an awestruck little boy on his shoulders, piggybacking a ride on his idol's shoulders. It had a whole bunch of extras inside it. It was a wonderful, wonderful volume. I actually do not know what happened to my limited collector's edition of the Superman volume that DC put out. But I know exactly what happened to my favorite volume, which was a Justice League of America volume that they put out with a Neil Adams cover. And you're going to be able to guess what that something was. I got the Superman volume, and I thought, this is terrific. This is just, this is so wonderful for a bunch of reasons that I'm going to get into that seem self-evident now, but they weren't evident in the 70s. I thought, this is fantastic. This is going on my Superman shelf. At the time, I had a huge Superman shelf of all kinds of things. And I was reading that one on the fainting couch, and I was thinking, the only thing that's missing here, the oversized reminds me of when we all used to spread out the Sunday comics on the living room floor and read them that way, flat on our bellies, reading Prince Valiant and Little Abner until the cows came home. I was blocking out certain details of that activity, and I paid the price for not remembering what I was blocking out, because when I was reading the Superman volume, I thought that would be great to do. And I got the Justice League volume. Not a small amount of money at the time. Paying $1.50 for a comic book? Not a small amount of money. I got the Justice League volume and thought, well, this time I will enjoy it the way it's meant to be enjoyed. So I laid down on the living room floor, spread it out in front of me so I could really enjoy absorbing the artwork magnified to such a great extent. And that arrangement caught the attention of one of my beagles who had been sleeping on the fainting couch, who saw something approaching newsprint on the floor, hopped down off the couch, walked over without looking at me, without talking to me, without asking my permission, hiked a leg and peed all over the Justice League. Well, I'm just sitting there, like this, on my elbows, on the floor. I think I actually asked him the question that we always ask our dogs when something like that happens, which is, what are you doing? When the one thing you know is what they're doing. I no sooner had said that than all of his brothers saw, oh, well, hey, you can't have the top P. It's going to be tough to explain to humans, but you can't have the last word. No dog will let you have the last word. You can't have the top P. You can't be the top layer. So one by one, they popped off the fainting couch or off the easy chair or out from another room and just proceeded by me in an orderly line to hike their legs and pee on Justice League. So that by the time they were done, there was no way to salvage it. Maybe after the first dog, there might have been a way to salvage it. I don't think so. But it wouldn't have been a physical way to salvage it anyway, because the last dog to pee, the one who got the last word, my sort of lieutenant to my beagles, he was in charge when I was not there, and he always accented his top peeing, as some dogs do, with the raking of the back legs to spread the pee. None of my other boys were allowed to do that. While he was alive, they were not allowed to do that. He was allowed to do that. He did that and punished them if they did. So when he was done to this sodden mess of a thing by now, 6 or 8 beagles had peed on it, but when he was done, he also raked it with his back legs, ripped wet, sloppy pieces out all over the place, throwing over like slops of silly putty all over the room. I have never found that Justice League Special Collector's Edition. I've never looked for it. I've never found it in the wild at the Brattle or anywhere else. It's just a fond memory. That's all. A weird, fond memory, because my dog now, I have only one. I don't have a huge crowd of dogs. I don't have beagles, which still amazes some old friends of mine. And the one dog I have now would not misbehave for all the tea in China. Not out of any coercion. I have never told her what to do or not to do, just because she would think it was really dumb. What are you doing? You don't pee inside the house. What are you doing? So I actually could have that Justice League volume, and I could even enter a second childhood and spread it out on the living room floor and read it. The only difference between now and 60 years ago is that if I did that, I would enjoy the reading experience, but then I would have to live on the living room floor because I wouldn't be able to get back up. But anyway, I had a bunch of those. God knows where they are. I don't think I have any DC's limited collector editions, except the one where, again, Jose Luis Garcia Lopez does the artwork where Superman fights Wonder Woman. I don't have any of the others, and I wish I did, especially that Justice League one. But I have these. These were from a later, happier age, and these reprint classic Conan stories with extras thrown in. There's you can count on Roy Thomas for great extras. At the beginning of the table of contents here, we get his story of how he collaborated with Barry Windsor Smith, back when he was just Barry Smith, to make The Savage Sword of Conan, which immediately started getting critical attention, and heaps of letters from fans loving it. But he also gives us a table of contents, which shows us a couple of interesting things. One of which is that John Buscema's younger brother, Sal Buscema, who was a prolific artist for Marvel Comics, does a really good job. You know you're gonna get good artwork when Sal Buscema does it. This table of contents shows that once upon a time, he was Silvio. He was Silvio Buscema. I'm not sure how that name would have worked. I kind of like it, but also they thank Glenn Lord, who I think at this point, Michael K. Vaughan would know best. I think at this point, Glenn Lord was Robert E. Howard's literary executor for the Robert E. Howard estate. They thank him for the use of the hall. But they also thank Robert E. Howard, and Roy Thomas puts it, without whom this book would consist of 100 blank pages. That's awesome. We got a great Barry Windsor Smith cover here, and then you get the whole thing without any problems, without any mussing. That is just a beautiful, beautiful work. And you get Conan reprinted all throughout this volume. And it's gorgeous. Especially once, this is all Barry Windsor Smith, and when his artwork evolves, it really evolves. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about here. He started off Conan as a kind of quasi-Kirby-esque figure. Blockish figures, very little in the way of crosshatch or detail. Big, broad action sequences. Yeah, look, see, that is a Kirby panel right there. And he, emboldened by the fans and by critical support, he eventually just metamorphosed his own style until it was something completely different. I won't say better, but just completely different. Look at the gorgeous detail and perspective in a scene like that. A scene like that would never occur to Kirby to draw. And if you had told him, I want a scene where one character is looking down on another, he wouldn't have done it this way at all, not in a million years. And the same thing applies to the action sequences, which are amazing, just amazing. Let me get you a good example here. Our heroes, Conan and Valeria, fight a great number of monsters in these issues. Look at that. Just incredible. Incredible. In the second volume of Conan that they did, you do get Barry Windsor Smith, I think. Don't you? Yes, you get Barry Windsor Smith in the opening story, The Song of Red Sonja. That is a little odd. Sonja is not behaving like she usually does here. She is duplicitous. And also curvy and wily. She's more of a pinup girl than the personality that Roy Thomas eventually gave her. Although there's a good deal of really good tongue-in-cheek humor here, because in the opening panels here, Roy Thomas does the dialogue for how a bar fight starts. And it's really well done. I mean, Barry Windsor Smith's visuals are terrific, but the writing is terrific. This big guy punches Conan. And a well-meaning spectator, just bends over him and says, "May I point out, my man, that the Brythunian is unarmed, but perhaps a chair?" Conan says, "Why not?" and cracks the chair over his head. And the crowd says, "Oh, 10 Asper says he takes that Brythunian pig." And the guy he's saying it to in the crowd turns to him and says, "I'm a Brythunian, you worthless wonk." And somebody says, "Wonk, did you say?" And so a bar fight erupts immediately, and there's this great tongue-in-cheek panel where Red Sonja is walking her way over the heads and shoulders of the crowd. She can't make her way through the crowd, so she's sheep walking over the top of them all. And what is she saying while she does that? "At them, dog brothers, we may be newcomers here, allies sent by the King Padishah, but no man wipes his dirty feet on us," while she's walking barefoot on top of them. Oh, just wonderful. The whole of this issue is done that way. It's done with just wonderful tongue-in-cheek, and it is interspersed with these exposition panels that are unbelievably gorgeous, giving us a story, the sorcery story that's unfolding while the thievery and the sword-fighting story is taking place in the main ground. And it's amazing. The artwork here is just amazing and fundamentally different from Kirby. Once Barry Windsor Smith got his sea legs underneath him, he was fundamentally different from Kirby. So this gives us that, but it also gives us something else. That I am, for Sumerian September, I am reading The Savage Sword of Conan, Marvel's black and white Conan magazine. I'm reading it every issue. I'm paying serious attention to it. And my favorite artwork in that magazine, by a long shot, a great deal of those issues were drawn by John Buscema, but my favorite ones by far are the ones where he's inked by Alfredo Alcala. His inking, Buscema might not have liked it, but it's beautiful, absolutely gorgeous. And here we get their adaptation of the famous story Black Colossus, but we get it colorized. So it's John Buscema artwork, but it's colorized. I think the artwork, the color here, yes, the color you can see is by Sev, just in quotation marks. That has got to be Marie Severin. And I'm not faulting the coloring, but I prefer this, believe it or not, in black and white. I mean, the coloring is really, really well done, but same thing when Barry Windsor Smith colors his own work. I prefer it in black and white, especially when the inker is Alfredo Alcala. Then it's just amazing. It does something that color won't do, and that I think color counteracts. This is a terrific story in which a princess is told, you must place she's told, allegedly by God, that you must place your kingdom in the hand of the first man you meet. And of course, the first man she meets is Conan. And it was a wonderful moment. He's going to now be in command of her armed forces, a significant official in her realm, and he has to look the part. He has to dress in proper armor. And there's a wonderful moment. It's captured really well by John Buscema here, where he steps out. He's been dressed in this armor, and he steps out. Well, how do I look? And the whole point of the artwork here, you see the astonished looks here, just astonished looks. But the whole point of the artwork is that you're supposed to be astonished first. Before you see the reactions of the people in the room, you're supposed to look at that picture and think, oh my, this is a future king. He does indeed look magnificent. So Buscema gives us that. I've already shown you in Savage Sword of September, full panel, just Conan standing there panels that Buscema does when our character is just dressed in a bear cloth loincloth and wearing a sword. He doesn't look like this. That is beautifully, beautifully done. So I really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed this one too, the original Conan. I guess my quibble here is that the ones that were in black and white, I wish they had remained in black and white. I mean, I know that's very hipsterish of me to prefer them in their original format, but I kind of sort of do. I think, especially when the inker is playing to the strengths of black and white. But like I was saying, these Treasury editions and the DC limited collector editions that I think about with such pain in the heart These were prescient in two ways to the modern era. One way was that they collected work. They collected comic books and added something else, added something extra. Marvel was doing this and would do more of it with, they had regular reprint 4-color comic books that you could get at the newsstand. They had the Fantastic Four was running regularly every month, but they also had a reprint comic called World's Greatest Comics every month that reprinted the Fantastic Four. I think Marvel Spectacular reprinted Thor. Marvel Tales reprinted Spider-Man. There were Western reprints, quite a few of them. There were a lot of those. The Avengers had one. I think it was called Marvel Triple Action, reprinted the Avengers. So reprints weren't that hard to come by, but reprints that were meant to be treasured, that had anything extra, the only thing extra you would get with most of those reprint volumes was the original artwork for the cover. Usually there would be a different cover when Marvel did those 4-color things, but it wasn't anything big and archival. It wasn't anything that felt special. And there certainly wasn't anything, aside from the cover, there usually wasn't anything extra added at all. No interviews, no text features, no original artwork reprinted from Comic-Cons or whatever. These things had that. And in that way, they were prescient because they revealed that comic book fans would buy this sort of thing. Now, there's a booming business for that. Marvel especially, but also DC. There's a booming business for repackaging your old stuff. As long as you make the repackaging special enough to warrant the money. And they don't ask $1.50 anymore. They ask $150. Which would have been absolutely unthinkable. $150 at the time when I bought this thing was twice my rent. It was absolutely unthinkable to spend that money. Now, though, it is that this presaged a time. This gave us a hint that Marvel fans would buy reprinted material provided you made it in an archival form. You had, DC did volumes, hardcover volumes of Batman from the 30s to the 70s, Superman from the 30s to the 70s. Marvel Comics started to get in on the bandwagon. I think they came after DC, but boy, did they make up for lost time. Stan Lee even leaned into this whole project by doing Origins of Marvel Comics, Son of Origins, Bring on the Bad Guys, and the Superhero Women, which were essentially reprint volumes. That's the only artwork that you got inside them, aside from the gorgeous John Romita Sr. covers. All you got was reprinted artwork, but you got extras. You got Stan Lee's writing in every one of those volumes. And fans bought them, even though they were $6.95. Origins of Marvel Comics was $6.95. I bought it anyway. Wish I still had it. I'm sure it's not $6.95 now. This presaged the present day in that regard, that comics could return to their own vomit or shake timber in the brain. The comics could return to their old material, repackage it, and fans would still buy it. They wouldn't say, as I did when I looked at this comic when it came on the stands, I thought, oh, I've already got all these issues. And then I thought, no, I want this. I have all the original issues, but I want this as well. And that has stayed absolutely true. And another way that this presages the future is technology. In a way, technology. Because one of the big appeals of these issues, oh, look at this, oh my God. One of the comics reprinted in this second one is a Conan the Barbarian story with artwork by the great Gil Kane and inking by Neil Adams. Gil Kane is not a slow artist. Neil Adams is, and probably doesn't like inking someone else's work, but he is a perfect inker for Gil Kane. Oh, just incredible. This story, what is the name? Oh my God, look at this. Just look at that. Look at how gorgeous that is. Oh, this story is called The Night of the Dark God, and it's adapted from a non-Conan story, I believe. Michael K. Vaughan would know better than I whether that's true or not. But at the heart of the story is an idol, a gray idol, stone idol, that we're told is a god. We're told that the Picts in the story worship it as a god. And we're told that the identity of the god is Brule the Slayer, who was not a god. he was King Kull's right-hand man in Atlantis. I read that when I didn't see that story for the first time in this. I saw it for the first time when it came out. And I immediately wondered, okay, well, do people worship Conan then? In thousands of years, do people worship Conan? If they're worshiping Brule, do they worship King Kull? Kull makes an appearance in a couple of stories, in this and the other volume. He's mentioned. He comes up. But another aspect of the present day that these presage is that the artwork was bigger. So that if you wanted to really stare at the details, you could. You could see a lot of the details that maybe wouldn't be as easy to spot if you were looking at a smaller comic book. Even Savage Sword of Conan, which was bigger than a 4-color comic book, was smaller than this. And that presages the modern day where you can have electronic comics where you can pinch the artwork. Where you can go to these older things, or for instance, like something that you wouldn't expect, like a Ross Andru issue of Spider-Man, where you're in it for the storyline, but Ross Andru was a meticulous background artist. It drew from photos and diagrams and models and whatnot, just meticulous. Zooming in on his ordinary, everyday, by-the-month Amazing Spider-Man artwork is very rewarding. And you can do that now if you have electronic comics, but there was no way to do that when these things came out. So they blazed the trail, really, because they showed that fans would buy archival stuff that they could put on their shelf. Had I been wise, I would have put those DC limited collector editions on a shelf instead of leaving them somewhere. I wouldn't have had them anywhere near the ground, even to revive old memories and read them spread out on the living room floor. I wouldn't have done it, because I don't discipline my dogs. Every other dog in the world, they do what I tell them, and they don't do what I don't want them to do. All I have to do is make a gesture, a look, a single word, a single murmur, a single sound. That's all I need to do, and I almost never do that, but I can, and it will work. I don't impose my will on my own dogs. I don't train them in any way. Which means they get to walk right over me. They get to destroy my property, except for the one I have now, who doesn't destroy anything. It was just incredibly cute all the time. Anyway, that is our Epic Comic Book for today. It's a win. I really think that as long as Epic Comic Book Wednesday is concentrating on Conan, probably there won't be any losses for me. Probably these will all be pleasant, but who knows? Who knows if Michael K. Vaughan will concentrate on Conan next time? Be nice. We shall see. There's certainly a lot more Conan to talk about. I'll drop some suggestions in his ear and see if any of them take. In the meantime, I'll wrap this up for now, and I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.